Michael and Lou, welcome back to the Oyster Stores. Talking to you just before this evening's concert. For anyone who's not aware of your background, there's the band Good Sons and you've both had solo careers. So what made you decide to team up?
We decided to club together because basically we're married and it made perfect sense to do something while we were both in the same house. You know, it was convenient.
I just happened to be married to a very, very good singer, and I'd also spent the last 10 years on the road on my own, really, and pouring my heart out to small but appreciative crowds with my dark, melancholic songs. And I thought it was about time I got back in showbiz, and now we're professional entertainers, the pair of us.
And I'd taken time out because we have a little girl, and I wanted to. I wanted to start working again, and it just made perfect sense, really, for us to start collaborating, writing together, and start a new project as a married couple. So it's and it's been good fun most of the time, hasn't it? Except for when we have marital rows, we fall out on stage. But then that's all part of being in a country band.
And had that interest in country been there all along? I mean, was it in your childhood, parents' record collections?
Well, no, I wouldn't say no. The interest in country music had been with me since the early 80s, but not as a grown-up thing. It's growing up, country music it was looked upon. I think my dad had a Jim Reeves record, and that was about it. But both of us, even though we weren't together at that time, were turned on to country music via Almost Blue by Elvis Costello. But obviously, with my band, the Good Sons, we'd been sort of ploughing an alt country furrow anyway, so it had always been there with me. But I think with Lou, as she'll probably explain now, it was music she came to a little bit later on.
My background was much more jazz and pop, really. I mean, I grew up listening to Frank Sinatra and the Beatles, and I really had no time for country music. It wasn't until, as Michael said, much later that I had my mind open to it, really, by Elvis Costello's album. And I was particularly struck by some of the amazing female voices in country. Mm-hmm. I suddenly heard Patsy Cline and thought, wow, that's an amazing way to sing. And as a singer, that those voices are really inspiring to me. So before I knew it, I was hooked.
You mentioned Elvis Costello there. We must be grateful for musicians and artists like him who open doors of country music and then crossover with the Juliet Letters with Brodsky Quartet. Is if you're a fan of his, he then sort of like exposes you to other genres that perhaps general public might not have considered had it not been for something.
Oh no, absolutely, yeah. He's sort of gone on a zigzag course through different strands of music, and I guess I've probably been with him every step of the way. A couple I wasn't so keen on, but anyway, but that's how it is, And you could argue the same with someone like Neil Young, So I think it is good to do varied things, and
the irony being, of course, that having been a mad fan of Elvis Costello for growing up, and then and loved the Juliet Letters, but then I ended up doing the Juliet Letters with the Brodsky Quartet. So and we both work with the Brodsky Quartet now ourselves. So it's funny how things come around. And that's a great feeling to think that the things that we listened to and loved have actually, we've made part of our actual.
Well, obviously, like tonight, we have Martin Belmont on guitar, and I grew up listening to Graham Parker, still one of my favourite songwriters of all time, and for me, the Rumour. They're like the British E Street Band. They were, a great band. So to have not one member in the band, in our band from the Rumours, is fantastic.
Well, talk about both the band and the latest album, but just before that, it's well documented your comparisons with the classic country duos. But was it important to you when you started recording as My Darling Clementine that you didn't want to just plunder their songbooks, that you wanted to enter it with original songs?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no point doing that. I mean, George Jones, for me, is the greatest singer ever, and certainly is in country music. So what's the point in re-singing George Jones songs, other than for, it's all right in a live setting, but it's pointless making a record like that. So, we're songwriters, so it was vital that, we might have sort of emulated the style and the sound of those sort of classic country duets, certainly with the debut Clementine record, but it had to be original songs, otherwise it would just be a cabaret turn, really. So,
we do like to do the odd cover for sure, because they're such wonderful songs. But like Michael said, as writers, our passion is writing new material, and we wanted to write songs for now, but in a genre which is perhaps one that we're harking back to a genre that's gone.
Yeah. We're talking in the middle of your tour to support the second album, The Reconciliation. Two people who are on there in name, George Jones and Tammy Wynette. Obviously, two influences. Firstly, Michael, could you tell me about how The Gospel According to George came to be written?
Well, I was reading his book, a biography called I Live to Tell It All, and it's quite an incredible biography. I mean, there's many rock and roll biographies full of tales of debauchery and drugs and drink and usual things. But George's is pretty exceptional. I think he drank and outdrugged everybody. Even Keith. It is co-written with somebody, but when you read it, it does sound like you're listening to George's voice. A lot of those sort of ghost-written biographies don't sound like the person, but his struck me that I did feel like he was talking to me, and there's a turn of phrase in the book which is really poetic, as befitting George the songwriter. So there's some great lines, and as I read it, I just started to underline lines from the songs that I particularly liked, and then put them all together and made a song out of it. So 90% of the lyrics are taken from that book.
Yeah.
And
so you co-wrote it with George Jones, really?
It with George. Sadly, he didn't know that, but I'm saying,
Does his estate get a cut?
Well, I was advised by my publisher, but I would gladly give him a cut. But I think George can afford it.
Yeah. And as far as Tammy is concerned, listening to it doesn't sound like an answer song to me. It sounds more like a protest song in terms of, come on, give as good as you get.
Well, thank you for that. It is a protest song, but I did feel that it was time to write something that challenged that particular song. I mean, Stand By Your Man is just a great iconic song of the 70s. We all know it. We all love it. We all love to hate it. We all hate to love it. And I just wanted to, seize the challenge really for myself. I wanted to write something that answered that. It's important to say that you don't have to stand by your man. I wanted to write something that was very anthemic, so that it felt, in the same way as Stand By Your Man, it felt like you could join in and sing along and almost not kind of realise what you're saying. And I think that's the case with Stand By Your Man. We all sing it, and then sometimes you go, hang on a minute. I like to think the same happens with No Matter What Tammy Said, and that, it's a sing-along song, but actually the message is very hard. It's my feminist country anthem, if you like, but it was also important that I didn't make it a woman-only song, because there's a guy in the song who's clearly a good guy, and this just happens to be about a man who isn't a good guy, but there's very much a nice man in the song as well, who is very much on the side of the woman who's abused. So
is that me? Am I that nice man?
Sometimes, sometimes. Couldn't possibly comment again.
Songwriting as husband and wife, are you quite good at taking criticism from each other, or is it a case of...
No, not at all.
That's quite good, but you didn't take the bin out, did you?
It is kind of like that. I mean, what happens is we usually, if we're co-writing together... I mean, in all honesty, what tends to happen is Michael will bring a song to me, or I'll bring a song to him, and then we pick it apart, and we get very precious, and we flounce out the kitchen, and one of us puts the bins out and the other puts the kettle on, and we try again. To some extent, we can be more exploring, because we know that if we do have a big row, somebody's going to go and pick our little girl up from school, and we'll carry on. We're not going to. The band isn't going to split up over musical differerences. Marriage might split up, of course, but I think the band might.
if you write with somebody who you obviously you're always going to be maybe more critical or more likely to fall into an argument if you're writing with your wife than if you and I sat down and write a song. We're probably going to be more tolerant of each other because we don't know each other so well. You're less tolerant, aren't you, of your wife or your husband? So it can lead to awkward moments. But
when I just tell him that song's rubbish, and he tells me mine is.
Well, usually when Lou brings hers, they're absolutely all perfect, and even if they're not, I just say they are.
Yeah, well,
it makes
that's
life easy.
exactly.
But no, they usually are, and I'm the one who has to pick the part of the song.
Well, who knows?
Whatever it is, it's obviously working well, because Reconciliation is a great album. Thanks very much for talking to us, and all the best for the rest of the tour.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.